Hello and welcome to this Illuminate session on MITRE ATT&CK. My name is Steve Maxwell and I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer with Sumo Logic. I've worked in IT for over 30 years, moved into security about 20 years ago, and have been working in the SIM and source spaces for the last 13 years. Here's the agenda for the session today. For the first part of the session, we'll cover MITRE ATT&CK. We'll talk about TTPs, adversary behavior, and look at the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. In the second part of the session, we'll cover how Sumo Logic leverages and aligns with MITRE ATT&CK. We'll look at tags, rules, and the security data processing pipeline. The MITRE Corporation is an American government-funded, not-for-profit research organization that works in the public interest. They created ATT&CK in 2013 to document adversary or attacker behavior. What MITRE has done is built, updated, and maintained a knowledge base and repository of adversary behavior. ATT&CK is based on real-world attacks seen in the wild by security researchers across the globe. This behavior can be described like an attacker's playbook. What's the attacker's methodology, and what are they doing to accomplish their goals? The ATT&CK library of information is freely accessible from MITRE and is used very widely across the cyber community. The initial focus of ATT&CK was on Windows Enterprise networks, but this has been expanded to other platforms like Linux, containers, and the cloud. Over time, they've added other matrices for other technologies and verticals like mobile and industrial control systems. Our focus is going to be on the enterprise matrix. ATT&CK is very dynamic and constantly evolving. The MITRE Corporation updates ATT&CK based on the changing threat landscape, as well as adversary and attacker behavior that's seen in the wild. Let's start by defining what TTPs are: tactics, techniques, and procedures. These are foundational components of ATT&CK. Tactics can be defined as what the goals of the attacker are. What do they want to achieve or accomplish? They're broken down into different categories, and currently there are 14. Tactics can be looked at as the methodology, steps, and stages that attackers take, much like a kill chain. I've listed a few tactics here as examples. The initial access tactic is defined as the adversary trying to get into your network. Persistence is the adversary trying to maintain their foothold in your network. Defense evasion is the adversary trying to avoid being detected and caught. And exfiltration is the adversary trying to steal data. As you can see, tactics map to an attack methodology and show the stages and steps that adversaries take. Techniques and sub-techniques get into more technical details on how the attacker achieves those tactic goals. With the initial access tactic listed above, there are different ways that the attacker can try to gain access to your network. They might use phishing or spear phishing emails with malicious attachments and links, or they might use social media platforms and messaging services like LinkedIn, Twitter, or WhatsApp. Procedures are documented examples of where tactics and techniques have been used in the wild. This is based on real-world examples of this activity as seen by security researchers in the security community. With the initial access tactic and phishing technique examples, there's a security vendor that has documented a spear phishing campaign, and they're able to attribute that activity back to the ferocious hidden threat group. For each of the techniques and sub-techniques, you'll find information on how to mitigate them, as well as details on what types of data sources are required to detect them. The data sources information is definitely of interest to us, since we need visibility into the logs being generated by your devices. I found that this information isn't as detailed as I would like, but it's a great resource to start identifying what needs to be logged. You'll also see a references section with links to content from security researchers and the security community. MITRE uses this data to populate the attack knowledge base and provides links directly to that research. Based on this security research, MITRE tracks APT or Advanced Persistent Threat Groups and the software and tools that they use. They've attributed and mapped all of the different tactics and techniques being used by APT groups, and you can see what that looks like with the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. MITRE provides visual representations of attack on their website and with the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, which is shown here. Across the top, from left to right, you can see the 14 tactics, and below that from top to bottom, you can see the techniques and sub-techniques for each tactic. What I've done in the Navigator is opened up and viewed all of the tactics and techniques that MITRE have attributed to the Lazarus Group threat group. The Navigator visually shows us adversary behavior, which is all of the tactics and techniques that this threat group uses. Adversary behavior is not just the individual techniques and sub-techniques, it's all of them combined. This shows us the characteristics, patterns, and traits of this threat group. But while individual techniques might be easy to detect, adversary behavior is hard to detect. This is in line with David J. Bianco's Pyramid of Pain. The Pyramid of Pain talks about how easy it is for adversaries to get around point solutions that you've deployed. For example, you may have a file integrity monitoring solution that's looking for malicious file hashes, or you may have firewalls, IDS, and IPS devices that are blocking malicious or suspicious IPs, domain names, and URLs. But attackers can easily recompile malicious code, which will then have different file hashes. And attackers can easily use different IPs, domain names, and URLs. There's a lot you can do with the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. Let's walk through a use case. The use case here is to understand the tactics and techniques being used by all threat groups that might be targeting your organization. As an example, we'll look at two threat groups, Lazarus Group and Fin7, and understand the common techniques that they use, as well as the different techniques. Here's the first layer or tab of the Navigator showing the techniques being used by Lazarus Group. In the second tab or layer, I'll show the techniques being used by Fin7. It's interesting to note that threat groups will use tactics and techniques that they have skills and subject matter expertise in. They won't use all of the tactics and techniques, just the ones they're knowledgeable about. In the third tab or layer, I'll combine and transpose those first two layers on top of each other, and this is the result. But what exactly is this showing us? What this final layer is showing us is a comparison of the tactics and techniques being used by both Lazarus Group and Fin7. The ones highlighted in green are common techniques being used by both threat groups. The ones in yellow and red are different tactics and techniques between the two. From a mitigation perspective, the green overlapping techniques are the ones you should look to address first. By addressing these, you're able to mitigate the threat from multiple threat groups when you address a single tactic. Once you've addressed the green techniques, you can move on to address other techniques. There are a number of benefits to using MITRE ATT&CK, and I've listed some of them here. To start with, as I showed, the ATT&CK Navigator can be used to understand adversary behavior, tactics, and techniques. This allows you to see the different tactics and techniques that threat groups use against your organization. You can also use MITRE ATT&CK to assess and identify any gaps you have in coverage. This will help you to understand what technologies need to be in place to detect and block adversary behavior. We walked through the process of layering the tactics and techniques of two threat groups on top of each other. With this, you can prioritize and address any gaps that you've identified. Focus on the common green overlapping techniques first, and once they're addressed, start to work on the yellow and red techniques. And finally, since cybersecurity is a continuous process, MITRE ATT&CK can be used to help measure your progress in being able to defend against adversaries and attackers. Now let's talk about how Sumo Logic leverages MITRE ATT&CK with Cloud SIEM Enterprise. The way that we do this is with tags. Tags are metadata that can be attached to different resources like rules, signals, insights, and entities. Tags are very flexible and can be used with searching and filtering, and can be used to pivot off of when running an investigation. With MITRE ATT&CK, we provide two out-of-the-box key value pair tags, which we'll take a look at next. Here are some screenshots of the two out-of-the-box MITRE ATT&CK schema tags. There's one for tactics and another for techniques. The techniques one includes sub-techniques as well. As we talked about earlier, ATT&CK is very dynamic and continuously being updated by the MITRE Corporation. For this reason, these two schema tags are being maintained by the Sumo Logic Threat Labs team. As there are any changes to ATT&CK with tactics, techniques, and sub-techniques, our Threat Labs team updates these tags and they're automatically propagated to our customers. Now it's hard to see with the slides, but on the very right hand side of these right screenshots, you can see some links. These links are directly to the MITRE ATT&CK site and the specific tactic, technique, or sub-technique. This allows an analyst to go directly to the attack site from the Sumo Logic interface. This makes it much easier to perform investigations. You don't need to open up additional browsers or browser tabs. Just click on the link and you'll be brought right to the MITRE ATT&CK site and to that specific tactic or technique. Here you can see a screenshot of the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator showing the out-of-the-box coverage that Sumo Logic provides. Our Threat Labs team aligns our Cloud SIM Enterprise content to MITRE ATT&CK, and we leverage the tactic and technique schema tags in our rules. And just like the schema tags, this rules content is automatically updated and propagated to our customers. This means faster time to value and faster time to detection with our out-of-the-box and continuously updated security content. This diagram gives an overview of the security data processing pipeline. It shows how logs and messages that are generated by your sources become records. Records are correlated to become signals, and signals are further correlated around entities to become insights. It's at the rules and signals level where we tag based on MITRE ATT&CK, but there's a lot of enrichment that's happening at the record level. For example, we can enrich records based on GeoIP information, so you understand where this activity is coming from or where this activity is going to. We can also look at the IP, domain name, URL, or file hash to see if it's on any threat intelligence indicators lists. This gives security analysts additional context and a deeper understanding of the true impact of this adversary behavior. So what does this look like in an actual implementation? On the left-hand side, you can see a search that's based on insights, and in the search results, you can see the MITRE ATT&CK tactic and technique tags. On the right, you can see what the tags look like in a rule and in a custom insight. If you're creating your own content, like rules and insights, the best practice is to apply the MITRE tags to your content. The previous screenshots were focused on insights. These screenshots are focused on signals. You'll see the same MITRE tags being used and displayed in the search results as seen on the screenshot on the left. You can get pretty creative and use some visualizations like sand key diagrams to visualize signals and see how they map to MITRE ATT&CK tactics and techniques. This is a SOC KPI dashboard showing on the top a breakdown of signals by MITRE ATT&CK tactics. As well, this dashboard shows important KPI metrics like time to detection, time to response, and time to remediate. We have very strong visualization in Sumo Logic, and MITRE ATT&CK is a key part of that. The next slide covers some tagging power tips. These aren't specific to MITRE ATT&CK, but should be helpful for most Sumo Logic users. First, when you're using the UI in Sumo Logic, you have the ability to filter by tags. And this just isn't the tactic and technique schema tags. This can be any tag that you've created. And when you see tags and signals and insights, these are clickable. And when you click on them, it will add the tag to the filter criteria. Tags can also have links in them. When you click on the three dots to the right of the MITRE tags, it will pop up a link directly to the tactic or technique on the MITRE ATT&CK site. There is no need to open additional browsers or additional tabs. And finally, we have the ability to automatically tag entity groups, which were introduced this past July. This slide has some additional resources on MITRE ATT&CK and how Sumo Logic leverages MITRE ATT&CK. The bottom two resources are very useful for learning how to use the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. The video and PDF links at the bottom walk you through the Navigator use case we covered with comparing the adversary behavior of two different threat groups. This concludes this session on MITRE ATT&CK for Illuminate. Thank you very much for your time.